Story 1. My emotions were invalidated from childhood, leading to low emotional intelligence as an adult, which resulted in broken and failed relationships. This was all because, as a male child, my emotions were not allowed to exist. Story 2. The ability to be a strong support in people's lives and yet receive little to no appreciation for it. Story 3. No one cares about you. You need to be a specific type of assertive and confident. Otherwise, you are barely considered a man. Story 4. How socially isolating and lonely it is to be a man. Story 5. They would be horrified to discover they are still overlooked, and others continue to take credit for their work. Story 6. How suddenly everyone stops catering to your emotional state. Instead of comforting you, they seem repulsed by your emotions and distance themselves. Most people who care about you seem to do so because they want something from you. If you have nothing they want, you will be treated, at best, with veiled pity. Story 7. Not necessarily treated as a predator, but definitely not trusted by default, especially by women. Being a man can be quite isolating. Story 8. The complete lack of empathy for men is striking. Studies often use euphemisms to describe men experiencing some of the worst situations imaginable, artificially minimizing the number of male victims. Additionally, men are frequently treated like predators, which is especially true for black men. While some may fantasize about being male for a day, a week, or even a month, the reality of living as a man for a year, 2 years, or a decade is vastly different. Nora Vincent could not endure it. Based on the testimonials of transgender men I have read and stories I have heard, becoming a man often leads to a profound realization. So, that's why they die by suicide so often. A man dying by suicide is more common than a woman dying from breast cancer. If the male suicide rate were to decrease to match the female suicide rate, the male lifespan could increase by 6 months. There are significant reasons for this discrepancy. Story 9. Higher societal expectations for toughness and emotional restraint have led to a heightened risk of violence, with men being assaulted more frequently. There is less support for mental health, increased workplace expectations, and diminished emotional intimacy in friendships, resulting in feelings of isolation and the belief that men cannot express their emotions. Story 10. The sheer dehumanization of men is evident. Statistically, men suffer more from physical violence, yet there are no safe spaces or shelters for them. Being a victim of abuse is often treated as something to laugh at. The media continuously portrays men negatively, and this also applies to teenage boys. Men are expected to conform to traditional gender roles during crises, whereas women are not held to the same expectation. Major organizations like the United Nations and the European Union, which advocate for gender equality, have reinstated the male-only draft for the war in Ukraine. Despite men being the primary victims of war, discussions predominantly focus on women and children. It does not get more dehumanizing than that. I could elaborate further, but it is becoming increasingly depressing. Story 11. Everything honestly. The loneliness, financial responsibilities, the constant need to protect, the pressures of society, the disrespect towards our mental health, how men who are abused by women are shamed, and being blamed for everything are overwhelming. We work in some of the worst jobs, face terrible dating experiences, and are often treated as if we are easily replaceable in almost every social situation. Being a man is not the exclusive club that some women perceive it to be. Story 12. How much they have to navigate society to avoid being labeled as a creep. I think the comments about loneliness are absolutely accurate. You essentially have to walk around staring at the ground and never talk to or make eye contact with women, or else you risk being accused of hitting on someone. Story 13. Any woman who has ever wanted to be left alone could get her wish. If my transgender friend is anything to go by, they dislike the constant sexual urges. The desire is overwhelming for them. Story 14. When all you see on television is female empowerment, portraying women as strong, fearless, capable, and intelligent leaders ready to solve any problem, while men are ridiculed and depicted as incompetent pushovers or overly masculine individuals, you are still expected to take the lead in crisis situations when the woman in charge breaks down crying. Story 15. No safety net. We talk openly, and someone will confront us. If you're bad with money, you end up on the streets. There are no built-in excuses. I imagine it would be difficult for women to realize that the situation isn't any better here, but I would still prefer to be a man. It seems less insincere. Story 16. I don't think women realize how alone and isolated most men are. Very few people approach you, and even fewer initiate conversation. It often seems like few people are genuinely interested in having a casual conversation. There were months when I would go to work, talk to 3 coworkers on my team, go to the grocery store, and spend the vast majority of my time completely alone. Story 17. You need to be accountable for your own actions. Your beliefs about how easy things are for men may be challenged. Story 18. Loneliness, sexual frustration, inability to make decisions in relationships, high job competition, and prejudices about sexuality and opinions. Story 19. Being in a public place and suddenly your body starts itching or experiencing an unexpected yet inappropriate arousal. Story 20. No more validation from just looking pretty. You must earn it through hard work in your community, sacrifices for the well-being of others, and selfless acts of kindness and humanitarianism. Alternatively, you could have a lot of money. Story 21. Lack of people caring about you. This has been the case in every relationship I've had. When she has a bad day, it requires her to vent while I listen and be the caring partner. If her friend has a bad day, she will spend hours on the phone or texting to support her friend. When I have a bad day, I simply say, "Today sucked because of insert reason." And I get a response like, "That's unfortunate. What should we do for dinner?" Additionally, you are often assumed to be the villain in the relationship. When there are problems, it is always, "What did he do?" I once dated a woman who told me, "I'm a woman and need constant attention, caring, and nurturing. You are a man. All you need is the occasional pat on the back." Society generally treats men as if we lack emotions, suggesting that things do not bother us, we do not need support, and experiencing emotions is seen as a flaw. Furthermore, women often tell us how we feel, despite our own words expressing our true feelings. Many people do not take us at our word when we express ourselves and dismiss it as just being a stubborn man or something similar. If you explain something to another man, it is accepted, but if you explain something to a woman, you are automatically labeled a villain for mansplaining and perceived as treating her as if she is incapable of understanding. Story 22. Balls are often in the way and need adjustments, especially in tight shorts while sitting down. It becomes easier to lift things above your head if you engage in a bit of strength training. Story 23. The immense pressure to maintain composure and support others, regardless of the circumstances. Anger often feels like the only safe emotion to express around others without fear of shame or abandonment. The body shaming from women. Society insists you should be sensitive and respectful but also discourages being assertive, which confuses people. The pressure surrounding dating is overwhelming. The loneliness is palpable. Story 24. That no one cares about them unless they are wealthy or unusually attractive. I imagine that would be hard for them to understand. Story 25. Loneliness and lack of attention, along with the effort required to find a partner or even engage in casual sex, can be overwhelming. Many individuals may experience a shocking realization regarding the expectations society places on men and the limited support they receive. Story 26. No one understands you. You have to be superhuman, making time for your spouse, spending quality time with your children, and still having the energy to help around the house and manage all the extra daily activities that seem to never end. You go to bed late and start all over again early in the morning. Story 27. Do you like compliments? Sure you do, everyone does. Well, kiss those goodbye. You won't be getting them anymore. Story 28. I think they would realize just how frequently they receive a free pass for inappropriate behavior and how warm, welcoming, and trusting everyone is towards them as women by default. That alone would make them want to return within a few hours, a day at most. Story 29. Go see Nora Vincent's book, Self-Made Man. When she realized there was no patriarchy and that men actually have it much harder than women, Her spirit as a feminist was broken. Story 30. I have seen this movie before. We all know what the answer will be. Some percentage of women will get offended. Those women will be challenged to participate in an experiment to demonstrate that the men are not lying. Those women will become even more offended in response. Story 31. Having to deal with women is something I enjoy. I love being around them and the feelings they give me. However, it can be a daily mental challenge. Story 32. I feel like everything negative in their lives is their fault, and the answer to every problem is to stop feeling sorry for yourself and work harder. They would be shocked at how little people want to hear about what is on your mind unless there is something in it for them. Story 33. Women crossing the street or avoiding your shopping aisle when they are alone does not feel good. I understand, but it is unsettling. Story 34. Figuring out how to walk with the situation between my legs without looking like I have a wedge or something wrong in my pants. Story 35. The constant effort required to maintain an appearance of strength, composure, and unflappable stoicism leads to a crippling fear of ridicule, primarily from other men, for finding and expressing joy in traditionally feminine things like flowers, kittens, and rainbows. This creates a crushing weight of responsibility to hold it together when everything around you is falling apart. Story 36. There are videos online of women using fake dating app accounts, pretending to be men, to experience what dating is like. One of them ended with the girl in tears, expressing sadness over the average man's experience and how difficult it was for her to get someone to reply to her texts. Many women would be shocked to understand what dating is truly like for men. If more women had this perspective, I believe they would approach men differently in the context of dating. Some women genuinely think that the average man can easily get dates on apps or even in real life. However, that is not the case for a large majority of men. Options are limited. The number of opportunities an average woman has compared to an average man is significantly different. Story 37. The first thing that came to my mind was morning wood and the struggle to control it when you don't want it. When I read these comments, I feel ashamed of my lack of maturity compared to theirs. Story 38. The trouser waterfall mechanic. If you are using the toilet and forget to hold onto the hose, the water pressure can pass through the toilet seat onto your pants and then onto the floor. It is a true headache to clean up, and you think to yourself, never again. But you might forget about it or take a chance. Story 39. Being told to move on instead of having a group of supporters affirming that they did nothing wrong and are perfect. Story 40. How they received little to no appreciation for the things they did right but were vilified and even banished from the limited existing privileges the one time they made a mistake. Story 41. The individuals who transition from female to male often express that they were unprepared for the loneliness and dehumanization they experience. They feel that no one cares about them. Story 42. There was a woman who lived as a man for a year or two to gain a different perspective. She wrote a book and then ended her life. I often reflect on this with these questions. Story 43. The level of restraint expected of a male, which is not required of a female in most social circumstances. Story 44. Men make maintaining friendships with each other much harder than it needs to be. I cannot describe how often my male friends take days to text me back or do not answer the phone, especially as I get older. There is also a pervasive stigma about being vulnerable with other men. Women will confide in each other while men are still learning to be comfortable with vulnerability and discussing important matters. Story 45. Figuring out what to do with anatomy in your pants. I don't think many women really consider what men go through trying to fit everything into clothing. Women have it easy without any protruding genitalia. And if a guy is large and a shower rather than a grower, that makes it even more difficult. Thankfully, I'm not excessively large and I'm a grower because I can't imagine how much more of a hassle it would be. I know that men don't have large breasts either, and some might bring that up, but I've never seen many women sit on their breasts. Whereas I frequently sit on my anatomy or get it pinched between my legs when standing up or doing something. Not to mention that my toddler has the best aim for them when jumping on me while I'm sitting. Large breasts or large anatomy, what do you think is worse? Story 46. This lady conducted research. Warning, it does not end well. I would also be interested in hearing from transgender men who transitioned later in life. I suspect invisibility and loneliness are common themes. Story 47. Having to initiate romance can be challenging. I believe they would be surprised to realize that they still need to present themselves as small and non-threatening, especially as a tall, bald, bearded man. Story 48. The pressure placed upon us from a very early age teaches us that the emotions of others will often be validated before our own, and this is to be expected. Story 49. Taking the initiative to do everything can be challenging. Many do not easily attract the interest of the opposite gender or receive complimentary drinks and meals. They may also find that charm does not help them evade consequences for their actions. Additionally, the perception that the world, especially in Western countries outside of the United States, is not as misogynistic as some narratives suggest, instead reveals a significant degree of misandry. Story 50. How society treats men in various ways is a significant issue. Nora Vincent conducted a similar experiment over 2 years, but ended it after 1 year and 6 months due to the challenges she encountered. Unfortunately, she took her own life afterward. Story 51. My female friends have called me on the phone, upset because it has been more than 3 weeks since they had a romantic encounter. I am relieved they are not men because they would struggle to cope. Story 52. There is significant pressure to protect people and society because you are considered the physically stronger gender. This expectation is present at all times and never eases. It does not matter if it involves family, friends, or strangers. You bear the responsibility not only for protection from violence but also for managing emergencies of various kinds. Failing in this duty often leads to being perceived as less of a man, and the pressure is unyielding. I question whether women could manage this burden. Story 53. The lack of easy attention and affirmation can lead to an existential crisis for many women. Story 54. The fact that no one cares about your problems or mental well-being, and you're weak if you complain about it. Story 55. The sex drive can lead many men to date undesirable partners simply for physical intimacy. The discussions about extreme actions taken for sex often seem baffling from a woman's perspective. While it can be argued that women who date for financial gain are doing something similar, they have the agency to earn money and live according to their own means. Story 56. The lack of support. As a man, I have been fortunate to have friends I can talk to when I am feeling sad. However, I often have to hold back. I have lost people in my life because I expressed just how miserable I was feeling at the time. Although they say the bare minimum to avoid appearing rude, you can tell they feel uncomfortable, and they stop reaching out as much. This is even more pronounced when it comes to romantic interests. Many of my female friends have been able to have complete breakdowns without facing any negative social perception. They receive full and unwavering support. I am not claiming that men have no support and women always do. However, in most cases, women receive more support and can express their sadness without being seen as lesser for it. Story 57. Being treated with suspicion and ranked by status creates a feeling of being a human doing rather than a human being. This leads to being automatically disbelieved instead of believed and being labeled a loser if you live at home or are not materially successful. The competitive environment can make one feel like an evil villain, emphasizing privilege, while also feeling largely invisible to the opposite sex. Maintaining facades constantly is often necessary to gain any kind of approval. Story 58. You have little to no social protection unless you can add a tag. You need to be a gay man, a white man, a black man, or similar. Just being a man isn't enough, unlike for a woman. Story 59. Losing your temper and cursing out anyone from your boss to your teacher to a perfect stranger without facing any real consequences? Starting a physical fight and having everyone jump in to restrain the person you hit first? Starting a fight with your significant other where the police are called and that person ends up being the one arrested? Admiring an attractive person's physical characteristics without being deemed creepy? Initiating familiar physical contact with a colleague, such as a hug or placing a hand on their arm or shoulder while talking, without it being considered inappropriate. Spending time with your child at a park or another public place without anyone suspecting you may be a predator or kidnapper. Getting drunk with another person and engaging in intimate relations but being considered innocent because you were inebriated while the other person is deemed guilty despite their inebriation as well. Uh, Simply showing up to the bedroom and it being his fault if he's not excited, his fault if you are not excited, his fault if things end too quickly, and his fault if it seems to go on for too long. Uh, Receiving luxury items for your birthday, anniversary, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Mother's Day while believing that sex is all your spouse desires on those occasions. Being able to enter any space you wish, regardless of the feelings, dignity, modesty, privacy of those who belong there, such as men's restrooms, men's locker rooms, the YMCA, the Boy Scouts, any gyms, and every social media platform specifically for men. Making a false allegation of sexual assault, sexual harassment, or domestic violence, being proven wrong but facing no penalties. Engaging in relations with underage male and female students and essentially getting away with it. Demanding a same-sex medical professional to perform a procedure or a same-sex officer to conduct a strip search or a same-sex professional for supervised urine sample collection. I will choose to stop there, but in the immortal words of Steve Rogers, I could do this all day. Story 60. The challenge of pursuing women and dealing with the intense competition from other men in the dating world. Story 61. There is a torture technique that was used in China and by a serial killer I read about, where a glass rod is inserted into the penis and then broken internally. I imagine they would really hate that. Story 62. There are two routes. 1. Instantly becoming a man with zero transition. They would be immediately criticized for acting too feminine or for being too kind and understanding. Most women would appreciate that either way. 2. Slowly transitioning with hormone replacement therapy and becoming a trans man. This involves being called a woman or being pointed out for looking too much like a woman. The difficulties increase with this approach. Story 63. Fighting and physical conflict are prevalent issues. Additionally, bullying among mean girls is less tolerated by the male community, which they would dislike. Men often engage in violent confrontations over such forms of disrespect and tend to have less tolerance for harassment. Therefore, mean girl behavior would not be accepted if exhibited by males. Note: this discussion focuses solely on mean girls, not any other demographic. Story 64. The complete lack of attention, socialization, and kindness creates an assumption that you may be dangerous to strangers and children. Story 65. The crippling loneliness of always being seen as a predator by others, having to earn love through what you provide instead of who you are as a person, and not being able to smile at children. Story 66. The heavy realization of increased accountability and responsibility, with no one there to catch you but yourself. Story 67. Always expect to never show emotion and support everyone, while no one cares about your emotional well-being. Story 68. Bisexual women often say they date men because other women often make pursuing them seem like a chore. They do not enjoy having to take on a male role as it can be significantly more challenging. Story 69. Women are often treated with more leniency throughout their lives and receive the benefit of the doubt in nearly every situation because they are perceived as girls. Many would be surprised to learn that not everyone is eager to assist them and offer support in their daily lives. Story 70. You are expected to fix everything that people break. When I am alone, nothing breaks. When there are people in the house, things break all the time. Why do people always break things? Story 71. Being held accountable for their actions and realizing that nobody cares about them. It's time to accept that. Story 72. Receiving small compliments about our appearance or actions is exceedingly rare and likely contributes to low self-esteem in men. This is why one compliment can stick with us for years. Story 73. We will tax them and use their money to live a comfortable life while harboring resentment towards them. Additionally, we will engage in frontline combat. Story 74. I initially wanted to mention that emotional loneliness can be as uncomfortable as when your skin feels stuck to another part of your body. Story 75. Losing the ability to comment or express concerns about something without it being dismissed due to male privilege. Being labeled as an oppressor because some criminals are men and most billionaires are men. The distinction between some oppressors being men and men being oppressors is lost on many. Story 76. Men cannot show their emotions or share their feelings. Story 77. The overwhelming loneliness and mental scars from constant rejection and being treated poorly because you are not Henry Cavill. Story 78. Working to pay your bills and his bills. Feeling hurt because the girl had a dream he was unfaithful. Being feared by women because men are perceived as dangerous. Story 79. Being a man can often feel isolating and lonely. If you don't have a significant other, family, or close friends and you are not the outgoing type, you may find yourself alone much of the time. It often seems that nobody wants to interact with you, and many people only show interest in men when they can provide something in return. Story 80. The way strangers treat them in public. I think most women have an overly optimistic view of what it is like being an average man in society. Story 81. Hands down, the treatment that sincere men receive is often challenging. Rejection occurs when they do not share personal issues with anyone, expecting to handle everything on their own. They invest effort in a relationship, believing it is where connections begin, only to be told it is not working out. Women experience similar feelings from a different perspective. Acceptance and admiration often come only to those who are assertive and confident, while others are left to feel as if they must stay in their designated roles. It is important to address the shortcomings in communication and the discomfort that can arise from being overlooked. Story 82. The endless criticism. There was a lesbian author who lived for 1 year as a man. Not only could she not complete the entire year, but the trauma led her to take her own life. Story 83. Everyday physical pain from being treated like workhorses. I believe women often do not understand the kind of physical pain we endure because we are resilient. Story 84. Realizing that no one truly cares about you and that you already had it as good as possible, particularly for women in America, it becomes clear that you cannot return to what you once had. Women desire not equal rights, but the advantages of being a woman combined with the advantages of being a man, while avoiding the disadvantages of both. Unfortunately, there is no way to reach them. Story 85. Mine would be fixing things. I cannot do it. I dislike it, and I am one of those women who will gladly pay a handyman to change a light bulb, and I am not sorry. I couldn't handle it if everyone came to me asking how to fix the random things that fall apart. Even in work environments, when the toilet is broken, it's always a guy on the team who ends up playing plumber. No, thank you. I will keep my peace of mind. Story 86. Accountability and the complete indifference of others. Women do not appreciate being criticized or being told they are not unique. Story 87. Imagine how frustrated women would feel if they were men and had to lose every argument with a woman and apologize for things they hadn't even done. I'm positive most women would claim they were being abused if they were men and had to deal with the normal day-to-day challenges of dating a woman who constantly criticized them and refused to take responsibility for her own actions, instead defying logic and reason to explain why it was the man's fault. Imagine a woman being told it was her fault you cheated on her because she liked another man's social media post. Accountability for all actions would make women hate being a man. Story 88. Going bald has been embraced by me, and I haven't had to pay for a haircut since the COVID pandemic. Thankfully, I can grow a decent beard so I don't have to look like Mr. Clean. Story 89. Being held accountable for every action, including mistakes. Attention-seeking behaviors from the opposite gender. Lack of community. Story 90. It's lonely and overwhelming with high expectations. No one cares, maybe except for parents. There are no girls to fall for you if you are average. If you are poor, it will be very difficult to settle down nowadays because of hustle culture and women's expectations of height. Story 91. They do not receive the same level of attention. Society is generally nicer and more lenient towards women. While this may not apply in all cases, it is often true overall. Story 92. If they were turned into a man overnight, they would learn about accountability for running their mouth, thinking I'm a woman they can't hit. Story 93. How a woman accusing you of violating her can ruin your life, and there is nothing you can do about it. Story 94. The complete lack of attention or external validation affects many individuals. A significant number of women struggle to navigate life without it, which contributes to feelings of insecurity. Story 95. I am a woman, and I am going to be honest. The amount of work you do and the financial responsibility you have is impressive. I do not know how you manage it all. I make a fraction of what my husband does. Story 96. Women can go indefinitely without sex and be just fine. They often do not understand the emotional frustration and stress it can cause a man in a committed relationship when his partner withholds sex or is unwilling to satisfy him for extended periods. I'm fairly certain they would not appreciate this. Moreover, it is important to recognize that many men need sex to maintain emotional health and a strong attachment to their partners, not the other way around. If a woman were to experience this from a man's perspective, she might be blindsided by the emotional stress many men endure without realizing it. During such times, her feelings might be invalidated, and she could be labeled as acting like a childish individual when she is in fact seeking support and understanding. This is a challenge that I believe many women would struggle to cope with. They might seek divorce, infidelity, insist on therapy, or react dramatically if their partner does not agree to work on things. In contrast, men are often expected to endure these feelings silently and may be seen as the bad guy if they break down or cheat during a moment of weakness that could have been avoided if their partner had been attentive to their needs. It can take just 5 to 15 minutes to relieve someone's sexual tension in various ways that do not involve intercourse. However, women may refuse to help regardless of the stress their partner experiences. Yet, they are often willing to spend thousands of dollars and hours in therapy sessions for their own mental health over far less distressing issues. If roles were reversed, I doubt the average woman would be able to handle it. Story 97. Ball sweat, itchy discomfort, skin sticking to your leg, constant libido, morning erections making it difficult to use the restroom, managing body odor, being cautious about communication to avoid being perceived as inappropriate, and the common reminder of my eyes are up here. Jokingly, but requiring significant self-control at times. Expectations of physical and psychological toughness prevail, and emotional vulnerability is often overlooked unless one finds a rare partner who accepts it without discomfort. No one genuinely wants to hear your problems. It's often met with eye rolls and empty reassurances to the contrary. Comments about fragile or toxic masculinity are relevant here. It's not a competition over who has it worse, but there are significant downsides. There are stark differences in social treatment. I wouldn't want the unwanted attention women receive from men and would not want to be in their position. Similarly, it's likely that women would not desire to swap places for the fierce competition for attention that men experience. Story 98. Warning. Many comments express that men feel they have it significantly worse than women, with some suggesting that women are overly sensitive. This reflects a common pattern in male responses. Story 99. I don't think they would appreciate how often their contributions are dismissed or belittled. I have always wondered why a seemingly happy father and husband would choose to end it all, but as you listen to men, many of them feel painfully undervalued and alone within their own homes. They are often expected to come last in nearly all situations. Story 100. Increased societal pressure results in higher expectations to be successful or provide. Toxic masculinity refers to dealing with stereotypes and norms that limit emotional expression. Heightened competition suggests that individuals are often more competitive in certain social or professional settings. The expectations of toughness create pressure to be physically strong or stoic. Increased objectification occurs when individuals are judged primarily on physical appearance. Unwanted advances involve experiencing harassment or inappropriate behavior. Story 101. You are a workhorse. No one cares about you, your personal life, or what you do for fun. You clock in, work, and go home when the job is done. Do not expect a compliment or congratulations for anything you do. Your accomplishments still aren't enough. You will never be as important as the wealthy individual. Story 102. I am experiencing this with my partner now. She becomes very upset over minor issues. I tend to believe there are solutions to every problem, and if one cannot be found, then it's best not to dwell on it since there is nothing more to be done. When she is feeling down, I comfort her and offer solutions, but she doesn't respond. I then provide other ideas and she snaps at me even though the next day we might try one of my suggestions which turns out to be a good idea. Confuses me because I feel like I am being unreasonable when she is in a bad mood. This situation occurs frequently, with small matters blowing up into major issues. I have young boys, and I sometimes feel like she behaves similarly, though they have outgrown such reactions unless they are tired. In the past, I've had relationships that felt similar, and my mother also acted this way. We have been seeing a female psychologist, who mentioned that men often tend to be more logical while women can be more emotional. I cannot continue having trivial arguments that leave me uncomfortable just to help her feel better. She is content in our relationship, but when I left her for a week about a month ago, she reacted strongly and insulted me, which was hurtful. When she returned, she had lost a lot of weight, and I am genuinely concerned for her well-being because I love her and appreciate her many positive qualities. When we go to the psychologist together, she recognizes how her actions affect me, apologizes, but after a few days we return to the same routines. I desire a simpler life. Is it possible to achieve that in a relationship? Story 103. What's not to like? We are awesome. Give them a few days to get used to urinals and pockets, and they will never want to go back. That is why this power must be jealously guarded. Story 104. I see the burden men carry, the financial responsibility to their families and the physical protection they provide. My husband cannot relax like I can in unfamiliar places because he is always on alert. He feels a responsibility for my safety and our children's safety that I cannot comprehend due to my lack of the same physical ability. Of course, I am responsible for my kids' safety, but his role is different. It's a heavy load, and I think that's the part one would struggle with the most. The weight I carry for my family seems different, but I have only experienced one side of it, so who knows? Story 105. Sometimes you may feel like you have two paths to choose from. However, if you lack a purpose or something to protect, you may feel as if you are already lost, and others may distance themselves from you. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.